I never imagined a heartbreaking journey would lead to the reinvention of a football club. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the empty stands of our once proud stadium. My heart raced, pounding against my ribcage like a frantic drum. I stood there, choking on the silence, surrounded by echoes of past cheers and broken dreams that I was just a kid, a ball at my feet, dreaming of glory. Our town's team, the Willowfield Wildcats, was everything. The colors, the buzz on game days, the scent of hot dogs and spilled sod was home. But that day, everything changed. News rippled through the community like a dark wave. We were going to be sold. Our beloved club, stripped from our hands, replaced by a corporate greed that didn't care about us, about our stories. Tears stung my eyes as I watched my father's face turn pale. He was a lifelong fan, and I could feel his disappointment like a weight pressing down on my chest. How could this happen? Our family had been coming to games for generations. I felt the throbbing pulse of betrayal coursing through me. I looked at my mother, her hands trembling as she clutched the scarf we waved proudly in the stands. What would we do without our team? Soon, our community was teetering on the edge. Families stopped gathering, laughter faded, and the joy evaporated into the cold air. I began to roam the empty streets alone, the screams of distant children playing football reverberating hauntingly in my ears. I felt lost, floating in a world that had forgotten who we were. Then one evening, I stumbled upon something strange. In the shadow of the crumbling stadium, I found a group of old fans, their faces lined with years of hope and heartbreak. They were huddled around a flickering streetlight, whispering urgently. The words "rebuild" and "reclaim" danced in the air like a forbidden promise. My heart raced again, curious but afraid. Was there a way to resurrect what we lost? With each passing day, their whispers grew louder, more passionate. They spoke of rallies, of protests, of a way to take back our team. I couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement tinged with fear. What if we failed? What if they silenced us once more? I clutched my own scarf, a token of everything I wanted to fight for. Maybe this was the spark of hope we needed, and yet, lurking in the silence was a truth I couldn't ignore. What were we willing to sacrifice? How far would we go to reclaim our team? The weight of uncertainty pressed heavily upon me. My hands trembled as I clenched my fists. In that moment, I realized we were at the edge of something monumental. But would we dare to leap into the unknown, or would we hold back, fearing another heartbreak? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days stretched painfully as I stood witness to the unraveling of what used to be our tight-knit community. I watched the dejection pooling in the eyes of my fellow fans, who had gathered in hushed circles, each whisper a spark igniting a shared grief. Among them was Mr. Thompson, a grizzled veteran with stories of the Wildcats' glory days etched deeply into his weathered skin. I recalled how he used to guide my father and me to our seats, booming out chants with a conviction that sent shivers of pride down my spine. Now, he slumped at the edge of the crowd, a defeated figure among the ruins. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting vibrant hues of orange and pink across the sky, I found myself trailing behind the group, my heart heavy with doubt. The tangible energy of the old fans was hauntingly beautiful, yet it twisted within me. I wanted to believe in this dream of reclamation, but the fear of failure loomed like a dark cloud. Would we have the strength to face the daunting powers that threatened us? Or would we be crushed once again under the weight of indifference? Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye. A young girl, not much older than I, dribbling a battered soccer ball along the cracked pavement. Her laughter danced through the air, vibrant and full of life, a sharp contrast to the heaviness surrounding us. I watched as she effortlessly weaved through invisible defenders, her face alive with a joy that seemed to mock the despair hanging over our town. It was unsettling and beautiful, like a melody from a distant past, a reminder of what football had once brought us. That I approached her cautiously, my heart aching for the lost innocence her energy embodied. "Do you play for a team?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. With a beaming smile, she paused her dribbling and looked up at me, her dark eyes bright with mischief. "I'm the captain of the Wildcats," she declared, as if it were the most obvious truth in the world. The sheer playfulness of her proclamation struck a chord deep within me. "The Wildcats?" I echoed, an involuntary smile tugging at my lips. "Yeah, we're going to bring back the real Wildcats," she proclaimed fiercely, as if carrying the weight of our collective dreams on her tiny shoulders. It filled me with hopious sense that perhaps the fire still burned within us, even if it flickered uncertainly. "Would you like to join us?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, and as I walked back to the gathering of fans, her enthusiasm was intoxicating. Day by day, it seemed I was not alone in this journey. Together with her and the old fans, we began whispering plans that echoed with desire. We organized small matches, unlikely reunions of people seeking connection and purpose amidst despair, dusting off old uniforms and pushing aside fear. Somehow, we began building the heartbeat of our team anew. But then, the dark heaviness returned when I stumbled upon a flyer posted outside the local cafe. A corporate meeting to finalize the sale of the Wildcats was scheduled for next week. The palpable fear gripped my chest once again. Every bit of progress we had made felt precarious. What if no one listened to our pleas? What if our efforts meant nothing in the face of unfathomable greed? The day of the meeting arrived. I stood outside the cafe, numbed by the chill of impending doom as the old fans gathered near me, their collective anxiety thickening the air. Mr. Thompson approached me, his eyes holding a fire that urged me to find my own. "That we have to stand up for what we believe in," he said, voice steady. "For every child dreaming on that field." His words ignited something deep inside me, and I glanced back towards the girl, still practicing her dribbling, oblivious to the storm brewing just beyond her view. A sharp breath drew into my lungs, my heart racing with a mix of courage and dread. As the meeting was about to commence, I hesitated for just a moment longer, collecting my resolve. We were on the brink not just of a meeting, but of reawakening our community's spirit. There was no turning back now. But as we approached the entrance, I caught sight of a figure stepping out: Samantha, the woman who had always been the face of the club's corporate management. Her expression was steely, the kind that never wavered. In her hands, she held a binder thick with our community's past and the club's future. I could practically feel the weight of our fates hanging in the balance. "Don't even think of trying to stop this," she warned, tossing her hair back defiantly. Her mocking tone offered nothing but a bitter taste of confrontation. But a sense of dread washed over me, and for a moment, my determination faltered. The battle we faced was more perilous than I had imagined, and the unsuspecting joy of the girl faded into the shadows. The true fight for our heart lay ahead, and I wasn't sure if we were fully prepared to confront it. In that instant, I grasped the truth: sometimes the hardest battles are fought not just against an enemy, but within ourselves. As the world around me grew dim, one question loomed. Would we rise as one and reclaim the Wildcats, or would we stumble beneath the weight of fear and uncertainty? With everything on the line, I knew we were just beginning to uncover what it truly meant to fight for our dreams, and the outcome hung in the balance like a trembling cord, yearning for resolution. As we stepped inside the cafe, the murmurs from the gathered crowd enveloped us like a shroud. The atmosphere was thick with tension, a discordant symphony of hope and fear. Old fans, faces etched with years of devotion, exchanged worried glances, clutching each other's hands for comfort, as if to reinforce the fragile thread connecting us all. That I could feel Mr. Thompson's hand clasping my shoulder, a gesture of solidarity. His eyes were unwavering, a grounding force amidst the tempest of doubt swirling in my mind. But even as the buzz of conversation stirred, my gaze remained fixed on the door through which Samantha had exited, her parting words echoing through my thoughts like a haunting refrain. A sense of foreboding crept upon me as we formed a small but fierce coalition of supporters. I shared with them the news of the meeting, the corporate maneuvers which threatened to sever our community from its lifeblood. The once bright gathering now appeared to dim, as though the air itself had grown heavier with every word spilled. "What can we do?" asked Clara, a longtime season ticket holder with a heart that matched her dedication. "They have the money. They have the influence. And we were just a group of people who used to chant in the stands. It's what we will become that matters," Mr. Thompson interjected. "We have more than nostalgia. We hold the memories of what made the Wildcats a family in our hearts. And that is our strength." A flicker of renewed determination washed over the group, and we began brainstorming ideas, fortifying our resolve. When I noticed the girl again, now lost amidst the adults, her bright smile reminiscent of a beacon cutting through the growing gloom, I felt a surge of defiance. If she believed in the Wildcats, then so would we. In the following days, I poured my passion into organizing a rally call for all those who carried the spirit of the Wildcats in their souls to unite. We printed flyers and spread the word through every channel we could muster, determined to summon every voice that once cheered for our beloved team. Each flyer was more than a piece of paper. It was a lifeline, connecting us in a cause larger than ourselves. But as the rally day approached, shadows of doubt began creeping back into my thoughts. I returned to the old stands, the decaying seats where my father and I had spent countless afternoons amidst the electric energy of victory. Now, it felt like a graveyard of dreams. I slipped into the stillness, the sounds of my memories reverberating around me as whispers of cheer seemed to echo off the crumbling concrete. What if we gathered the masses and still failed? What if our voices were drowned out by corporate greed? I ran my fingers along the worn bench, remembering my father's pride when he spoke of the Wildcats' resilience. "You have to fight, no matter what," he used to say, a mantra that resounded in my soul now more than ever. The night before the rally, as I lay in bed, I could hardly sleep. My heart raced with both anticipation and dread. Everyone was counting on me. Every pair of expecting eyes, from the oldest fans to the little girl who had breathed fresh life into our cause, was anchored to my commitment to fight. I closed my eyes, drawing in strength from their faith. Perhaps, just perhaps, I was not fighting this battle alone. The day of the rally unfurled with a vibrancy I hadn't anticipated. The early morning sun cast streaks of gold upon the gathering crowd, each face a canvas of resolve and hope. Some wore old Wildcats jerseys, others brandished homemade signs, their messages a testament to the love for the game we all shared. "Save our Wildcats," proclaimed one, while another read, "Together, we fight." My heart swelled at the sight. I stood before our makeshift stage, fueled by the voices reminding me why we were here. It was not just for football. It was for community, for memories, and for every child who dreamed of one day donning that jerseyed AS. I stepped forward, gathering my breath to speak. I locked eyes with the young captain, who stood perched on a bench, her excitement electrifying. Just as I began to address the crowd, an unexpected hush fell over them, and I turned my gaze to the road beyond the cafe. A sleek, black car pulled up, the kind that whispered of power and authority. My heart dropped as Samantha emerged once more, flanked by two sharp-suited men whose expressions dripped with condescension. I felt the air shift ominously, tension crackling like electricity. "Let's see how far your little rally goes," Samantha quipped, her voice slicing through the hopeful atmosphere. The men behind her smirked, eyeing the gathered crowd like wolves surveying their prey. As a chill swept through the revelry, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Would this day be a triumph of our collective spirit, or a crushing reminder of our limits? The rally lost its vibrancy in the face of their poised confrontation, each heartbeat echoing the uncertainty in my heart. I drew a breath, a mixture of fear and hope spiraling within me. "If we give in to despair, we give them everything," I spoke, voice wavering but firm. "But if we stand up, we become more than just spectators of our fate." Yet behind me, the crowd stirred uneasily at the sight of Samantha and her entourage. Whispers spread like wildfire, and I felt the weight of the moment hanging precariously over us. This was a united front, but would it be enough? My chest tightened with the realization. We were only at the beginning. A storm loomed on every horizon, and the battle for the Wildcats was far from over. The crowd's unease rippled around me like an unsettling tide, and I stood at the epicenter, torn between a flicker of hope and overwhelming anxiety. Samantha's presence felt like a storm cloud poised to unleash chaos on our fragile unity. Her knowing smirk seemed to taunt our collective efforts, plunging my heart into a deepening darkness. But even in that moment, as the crowd whispered uncertainly among themselves, a small voice broke through. It belonged to the girl I had spotted earlier, the one with the radiant smile. She climbed atop a nearby bench, her cheeks flushed with determination. "We're the Wildcats," she shouted, her small frame trembling with fierce passion. "We're not just fans, we're family. And families don't give up." Her words pierced the suffocating atmosphere, creating an unexpected opening through which hope seeped in. As if ignited by her spirit, a few voices began to rise in support, resonant and full of life. "That's right," someone cried out, and by some unseen force, I felt the rally shifting in front of my eyes. The winds of doubt and fear began to turn into a breeze of solidarity. Thompson's arm gripped my shoulder tighter, his eyes alight with renewed zeal. "Can you hear it?" he whispered urgently. "That's the heartbeat of our community." Don't let her words be drowned out. Empowered by her courage, I stepped closer to the crowd, channeling their strength as I spoke. "She's right. We are not merely voices in a sea of uncertainties. We are the lifeblood of this community, and no one can take that away from us unless we allow it." The cheer that erupted from the crowd soon morphed into chants, a wave of sound that invigorated my resolve, washing away the shadows of despair. "Save our Wildcats! Save our Wildcats!" The words echoed loud enough to shake the very foundation of the pavilion beneath us, reverberating against the glassy sheen of Samantha's car. The look on her face shifted, her confidence faltering for the briefest moment. I hoped fervently that this spark, this flicker of ardor, could set ablaze a fire of change. As the chants echoed, a few friendly faces from our past stepped forward, seasoned members of our community who had not been seen in years. They held out symbols of their loyalty: scarves, flags, even old bobbleheads, reminders of our shared history. "We're here," one called, drawing forth others, slowly but surely, to join the cause. Yet the sudden swell of courage also revealed hidden fractures. In the exhilaration that buoyed us, I could see worry etching itself into the faces of some who remained uncertain, fearing that our spirited defiance was merely a drop in the ocean against the colossal waves of corporate power. I sensed that there would be a price to pay for standing against Samantha and her coalition. The very notion threatened to tear at my resolve. Then a poignant moment came when Clara, standing in front of me, raised her handmade placard high as if it were a shield. "This team stands for something bigger than us," she shouted. "We've all had heartbreak, but we've also had moments that made this community a home. We fight for that, for our children, and for the stories we tell." Those words nestled in my heart, and although doubt still simmered beneath the surface, I pushed it down, letting our shared memories wrap around us like an invisible banner, one that demanded honor and respect. But just as we rallied, I saw Samantha step forward, the smirk returning with a renewed sharpness. "You think a few chants can save you?" she spat, her tone dripping with disdain. "What you're fighting for is obsolete, a nostalgic fantasy." She gestured dismissively to her companions, who exchanged glances, clearly enjoying the show. "You can't cling to the past and expect to win." Her words hung in the air, cutting through the robustness of our chants, and for a brief moment, I felt the breath caught in my throat. Had I committed us to a battle so large that victory was merely a figment of our collective imagination? But then the same girl with bright eyes caught my gaze and gave her small smile a beacon, reminding me that miracles often sprang from the most unexpected places. Samantha caught my eye, her confidence unhinged slightly by the steadfastness of our voices. "You're making a fool of yourselves," she stated, but uncertainty flickered in her eyes as she continued. "But go ahead, keep shouting. It will only make things easier for us when the time comes." And just as she turned to retreat with her entourage, their footsteps receding in the cacophony of our voices, a new realization flashed within me. From the back of the crowd, a single figure stepped forward with an air of authority, eyes scanning the crowd before finally locking onto Samantha's retreating back. "Stop right there," the figure bellowed, a voice deep and commanding that pulled every gaze to the source. My heart raced. It was Coach Harrison, the beloved former coach of the Wildcats. He had been absent from our community for years, a shadow of our collective spirit. A sense of disbelief washed over me as I watched him stride forward, the man who had once brought glory to the Wildcats now reappearing at what felt like our darkest hour. But why was he here now, after years of silence? The crowd hushed, and the tension thickened again, a paradox of hope and dread circling like an unseen predator. I held my breath. Had the tides finally turned, or was this yet another twist in our tumultuous struggle? The air crackled with anticipation as Coach Harrison stood resolute before us, his expression a mixture of determination and vulnerability. Years had been etched on his face, the lines of time telling stories that resonated with our own struggles. Silence enveloped the gathering, the previous chants fading into a tender lull as we sought clarity in his presence. "Everyone," he began, his voice gravelly yet full of warmth, "I know you've been fighting to save something that feels like it's slipping away. I've witnessed the heart of this community from the sidelines and carried the weight of every cheer and every loss. Your passion, this very passion, is what made us champions." His words wrapped around us, warm and inviting, like a soft embrace after a long, cold night. I could see flickers of hope igniting in the faces of those around me, but beneath that warmth, a layer of unease lingered. What would he say next? But I also know, he continued, his gaze piercing through the crowd, locking onto each of us, that change is inevitable. What we once had, what once was, cannot return to exactly how it was. The world is moving forward, and we must find a way to navigate that journey together. A few murmurs of dissent rippled through the crowd, and I felt the dissension bubble within my own heart. Was he here to lead us toward acceptance of some relentless change, or would he advocate for a revolution? The heart of the Wildcats pulsed with anger and confusion as I contemplated an uncertain future. "Change doesn't have to mean forgetting," he said, his eyes glistening with unshed tears that mirrored my own emotions. "It means taking everything we've built, every memory branded in our souls, and reinventing it. The Wildcats represent more than just a game. We embody resilience, heart, and togetherness. And together, maybe we can shape that into something new." The girl with the radiant smile stood taller, her optimism palpable, promoting a glimmer of something resembling unity among us. "And maybe," she shouted, emboldened by Coach Harrison's words, "we can find a middle ground, something that honors our past while giving us a chance at a future." I felt a shimmer of hope in her suggestion, but as it flickered, so did the reality of our situation. The corners of my mind were shadowed with the worry of what forging that future might entail. Would it require us to concede too much? Would we have to betray those who had instilled in us this sense of belonging? As I gazed into the crowd, I noticed Clara whispering urgently to a small group at the edge. I turned to join them when suddenly, there came a loud shattering sound. Samantha, no longer lurking at the edges, had returned, wielding a sleek device reminiscent of a corporate sledgehammer, swinging recklessly through the air. Gasps rippled through the crowd as she smashed the club's logo on the podium, reducing a symbol we held dear to mere scraps. "Look around you," she crowed, a shadow blocking the sunlight breaking through the clouds. "Your precious community is crumbling. Isn't this what you wanted? A fight? A way to be heard? Or are you just too scared to see the writing on the wall?" Disbelief festered within me. She reveled in our chaos as if intent on tearing apart the very fabric we were trying to weave. A realization gripped me. She wasn't merely after the club. She wanted to dismantle us, to exploit our fears and uncertainties, turning us against one another in our collective struggle. That I could hear Coach Harrison raising his voice, advocating for us to hold on to the pride we shared. "Don't let her poison what we've built. Don't let her convince you that you're not worth fighting for." But doubt seesawed in my heart. Was I brave enough to stand against her assault, to believe the Wildcats could be something other than a relic of our past? Just then, I felt a slight tug on my sleeve. It was the girl with the bright smile. Her eyes sparkled with determination. "We can't let her win," she whispered urgently, her voice standing out starkly against the chaos. "We need to show them who we really are." Before I could respond, Clara turned toward me with despair etched in her features. "What do we do now?" she asked. The weight of that question settled heavily upon my chest, threatening to smother the flicker of hope that had once burgeoned in my heart. How could I answer? In that moment, The question didn't belong solely to me. It echoed through the crowd and into the pavement, a collective plea for direction amidst the tumbling tempest. Suddenly, a flicker of light broke through the clouds, illuminating Coach Harrison's frame as he stepped closer to us, rallying the voices rising from the depths. Together, we faced this together. His fierce resolve sparked a flicker of conviction within me. Hope and fear locked in an intricate dance, but the swell of community enveloped us, urging us to stand strong. Yet, as Samantha's laughter echoed like nails on a chalkboard, I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom, an unsettling premonition that lurked at the edge of my mind. And then, in the midst of the chaos and uncertainty, a message flashed across a screen behind us, an announcement we had never anticipated, and one that cracked open the door to a revelation more profound than any of us could have even imagined. Upcoming auction. The Wildcats' legacy to my heart sank, and with it came the weight of a chilling realization. It was not just our team at risk. They were threatening our very history, our legacy, our place in this world. Panic surged through me, yet simultaneously a deep current of determination rose. I clenched my fists, steeling myself for the battle ahead as the crowd erupted into frenzied whispers. There was no turning back now. We had to band together like never before, for the stakes were higher than any of us had ever realized. The murmur of uncertainty filled the air like a thick fog, wrapping around each person, hinting at the turmoil that lay within. I gazed at the broken remnants of our club's logo, scattered shards that symbolized the fragility of our identity. The wild energy that had surged moments before now felt subdued, our aspirations punctured by the stark announcement of the auction. Coach Harrison moved steadfastly forward, his presence a bastion against the tidal wave of apprehension. "This isn't the end. This is our moment to fight back," he declared, rallying us with each syllable. Yet, I felt the silence stretch, each heartbeat magnifying the truth that gripped us. What would fighting back really mean? Was it worth the risk? "We can't let them take away our memories," the girl with the bright smile urged, raising her voice to command attention. "Let's gather everything, the stories, the moments, rebuild our spirit stronger than it's ever been. If we pool our voices together, we can drown out the noise of doubt." As her words wrapped around us, I couldn't help but notice Clara's waning enthusiasm, her gaze flitting from one face to another, uncertainty etched into her features. It struck me then how fear could consume us if we weren't careful. "Clara, we can do this. We just have to decide that we'll protect what we have." My voice came out steadier than I felt, but even as I spoke, the new reality sank its claws into my mind. How could we salvage something that was being stripped away before our very eyes? The thought felt insurmountable, and a creeping dread snaked its way into my heart. Suddenly, the air shifted as Samantha took a step towards us, her grin wide and unsettling. "Really? You think you can keep what's already been deemed obsolete?" She reveled in the chaos, her confidence sharp like the remnants of the logo littered on the ground. "You think nostalgia can win over progress? How quaint." Before I could respond, Coach Harrison held up a hand, magnetizing our focus back to him. "We need plans, not chaos. Gather in the gym tonight. We'll strategize." There was a solemnity to his tone that resonated with me. Perhaps we needed to harness this moment of despair, turn it into something tangible, return the focus to action rather than victimhood. As we dispersed, I felt a mingling of hope and trepidation. Clara caught up with me, her eyes searching. "Do you really think we can do this? I mean, what if it doesn't work?" I hesitated, grappling with the weight of her question. If we don't try, nothing will change. But if we come together, we might not just save what we love, we might create something even greater. Even I didn't fully believe my own words, but they sparked something within me, a flicker of courage wrapped in uncertainty. That evening, the gym became a sanctuary, a shifting covert space filled with hushed whispers and hesitant plans. I watched as faces once laden with doubt transformed as they united, crisscrossing ideas back and forth. Coach Harrison's chest swelled with pride as he spoke of fundraising and outreach, reminding us that sometimes legacies are not just inherited, but forged anew through collective strength. Time slipped by, the heaviness lifting into a hopeful energy pulsating through us. But as we parted, the weight of looming uncertainty lingered. The auction date hung over our heads like a sword ready to drop, and I sensed it gnawing at the spirit we had begun to cultivate within the gym that I made my way home, caught in introspection as the cold night wrapped around me like a blanket. The moonlit path seemed to echo my thoughts. Could we really pivot from despair to hope? My heart raced as I recalled Clara's anxious face. She had always seemed so sure of everything. Yet tonight, she was vulnerable, raw in her uncertainty, and I couldn't shake the fear of failure for both ourselves and her. Suddenly, I heard a soft rustle nearby, breaking my reflection. I turned to see a figure in the shadows, a familiar silhouette. Hey, it was the girl with the bright smile. I just wanted to thank you for believing today, even when things felt bleak. Her warmth washed over me, and I smiled back, feeling that buoyant camaraderie reigniting our spirits. But just as quickly, her expression turned grave, and I could sense the weight upon her heart. I overheard something important. Her whisper dripped with concern, tension lining her brow. Samantha, she's planning something bigger than we realize. Something that could tear us apart before we even have a chance. A chill crept through me, igniting a wild sense of urgency. What are you talking about? I asked, my breath hitching. We need to stay alert. She's dealt with loss before. I think she's willing to use anything she can against us. She spoke, her voice barely above a murmur. Maybe even unraveling the truth about why this club matters so much to us. If she reveals our vulnerabilities, she might convince others to abandon ship. Each word struck me like an echo in my chest, reverberating the raw truth of our fragility. As dread flooded through me, I understood Samantha's ply, a game of manipulation, poised to leverage our heartache for her advantage. Then we have to be ready, I managed to say, my resolve firming with each syllable. We need to find out what she knows and protect our story, no matter the cost. The girl nodded, her eyes reflecting both fear and determination. Together we stood on the precipice of uncertainty, a web of uncharted possibilities swirling around us. The battle for our souls was far from over, and with every breath, the tension thickened. The stakes were set, and amidst the backdrop of uncertainty, a sense of urgency ignited within me. Would I truly have what it took to lead when the winds of betrayal threatened to drown us all? The night sky, once dotted with stars, now felt like an omen as late shadows danced in the twilight of a storm brewing on the horizon, one that could change everything we held dear. My heart raced with unanswered questions. Just how deep did Samantha's plans run, and who besides her was ready to exploit our vulnerabilities? As I made my way home, unable to shake the heavy weight of dread and determination intertwined, I couldn't help but feel we were inching closer to something greater, perhaps something irrevocably tragic. The following morning, the sun rose hesitantly, its rays fighting through a shroud of clouds that mirrored the turmoil within my heart. I lay in bed longer than usual, the weight of the world resting on my chest. It was as if the very air had thickened overnight, suffocating the flickers of hope that had ignited in the gym. Finally, I pulled myself from beneath the covers, and with each step out into the world, I felt the tension coil tighter in my stomach. I took a deep breath, hoping to inhale determination, but exhaled clouds of doubt instead. The echoes of last night's conversation with the girl with the bright smile replayed in my mind. Samantha's potential scheming felt like the dawn of a new war, with the stakes higher than ever. At school, everything felt different. Conversations were punctuated with nervous laughter, glances exchanged out of the corners of wary eyes. The club, once a sanctuary, now felt like a fragile shell, one piece away from shattering. I caught sight of Clara near the lockers, her laughter mingling with the others, but I noticed the forced smile on her face, the flicker of dread beneath the surface. She was trying so hard to hold it together, and I felt a pang of guilt for my own burgeoning fears. "Hey," I said softly, breaking through the clamor. "Are you okay?" She diverted her gaze for a heartbeat, then met my eyes slowly. "Just trying to stay positive, you know?" Her voice was a whisper of its previous vibrancy. "That's what we talked about last night. But I can't shake the feeling that something's wrong." And how right she was. Ahead of us, the school courtyard buzzed with the chatter of students, if oblivious to the storm brewing just behind the scenes. The auction loomed, but Samantha's whispers felt like the real threat. How could we protect what we had when even our unity felt fragile? I thought back to my recent conversation with the girl who had spoken to me the night before. A knot of urgency tightened in my stomach. Clara, I said suddenly, what if we reached out to some of the others? We need to talk about what's really happening. I can't shake this feeling that more people need to be aware. She nodded. You're right. Maybe we could do something informal like a meeting at my house. Just to share our thoughts, voice our concerns. Comfort in numbers, right? Before I could respond, a commotion erupted from the front of the school. The unmistakable laughter of Samantha danced above the crowd, and I felt a shiver race through me. She was flaunting her power, her confidence built on the fragile remains of our unity. I followed Clara's eyes as they locked onto the unfolding scene. Samantha had gathered a small crowd, gesturing animatedly as she spoke. It was all theatrics, a show of dominance. The smirk on her face was maliciously beautiful, like a viper ready to strike. Are you really going to trust them? She taunted, her voice laced with venom. Those who can't even keep their club from being sold off? The past is just that, the past. It's time to move on. I clenched my fists, the words cutting deep, each syllable an accusation aimed directly at our hearts. Around me, I sensed the flickers of tension grow, a mixture of loyalty and uncertainty. Clara stepped forward, emboldened. We're not giving up on our story, Samantha. We're fighting for our place here. But Samantha laughed, a sound that resonated with cruelty. Fight all you want, but nostalgia won't win a single battle against progress. The auction is set, and while you're stuck in glory days, we'll be ready for the future. Her words, a shadow crept through my mind, teasing at fears I hadn't fully formed. What if we truly were too focused on the past? What if Samantha was right? I could feel Clara's hopeful gaze turned into anxious desperation, as if she were questioning our resolve. Then, amidst the disarray of emotions, a small voice caught my attention. But what about the team? What about the friendships we've made? It came from a boy named Eric, someone I might have overlooked in the crowd before. Yes, I shouted over the noise, buoyed by his unexpected courage. That's what really matters. We're not just fighting for memories. We're fighting for who we are now, a family forged through trials. Regardless of what's happening, we have to remember that together, we're more than the sum of our parts. The crowd shifted uneasily. The cracks began to show in the suffocating facade of insecurity. Yet, before anything could develop, Samantha turned it against us. Such a sweet sentiment, she mused, all honeyed contempt. But you're naive to think that family will hold strong when real decisions need to be made. How far are you willing to go to protect it? I could feel the weight of the words hanging in the air, a challenge inviting divisions. What was left unspoken lay thick in the atmosphere between us. What sacrifices would we make, and at what cost? The ground beneath my feet felt unsteady, rocked as if by an unseen tide. As the bell rang, signaling a pause to our embattled standoff, I turned to Clara, both of us caught in the storm of uncertainty. We need to gather everyone as soon as possible, address this. It depends on us to face what Samantha's planning head on. Okay, she agreed, determination kindling in her gaze. Let's do it. But we need to solidify our message, our purpose, remind everyone what we're fighting for. As we walked away from the courtyard, shadows looming long behind us. The further we moved, the more I felt a whisper of dread mingled with the flickers that had begun to dance within us. But another twist awaited, just outside of our vision. As we neared the entrance of school, our phones buzzed to life, illuminating with alarming notifications. I grabbed mine, brows knitting together upon reading the message. Meet me in the park after school. I have something important to tell you. Something about Samantha. My heart dropped, a culmination of anxious anticipation surging through me. Clara looked sideways, concern etching her features deeper. Who's it from? I don't know, I murmured. But we have to go. But as we turned, stepping away from the school and into the uncertain embrace of the world outside, I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at play, something more sinister, lurking beneath the surface of our fragile bonds. We were running into the storm, yet the real question lingered: would we emerge united, or would the tempest of betrayal pull us apart at the seams? The park stretched before us, vibrant yet strangely ominous, as if cloaked in a heavy mist that blurred the colors of autumnal leaves. Clara walked beside me, her footsteps echoing the cadence of my pounding heart. The air was thick with unsaid words and unease, each breath drawing in the weight of our fears and the uncertainty that wrapped around us like a cloak. What do you think they want to tell us? Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper, each syllable laced with trepidation. I don't know, I admitted, my mind racing through possible scenarios, but they all felt futile. A part of me feared this message might be the catalyst for the unraveling we so desperately tried to avoid. But they said it's important. We have to listen. As we approached the designated spot under the gnarled oak tree that had stood witness to so many shared moments, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Eric, his usual sprightly demeanor replaced by a stormy seriousness that sent a jolt of apprehension through me. "Thanks for coming," he said, each word thick with urgency. "I felt like I couldn't wait to tell you what I've uncovered about Samantha." "What is it?" Clara urged, her whole presence leaning into him, as if hoping to absorb whatever he would say next. Eric took a deep breath, his hands fidgeting with the brim of his hat. "I overheard some things, Samantha and her group. They're planning something bigger than we initially thought. They're not just after the club. They want to shift the entire social fabric of the school." She talked about recruiting more students to her side, drawing in those who are easily swayed. That a shiver ran down my spine, the reality of what he conveyed landing heavily. "But why?" "Control," Eric replied, his voice low as if afraid the very trees would conspire against us. "If she can manipulate people's weaknesses, frame everyone against us, she will become untouchable." It sounds crazy, but I heard her mention aligning with some people from other clubs, those who might have felt marginalized. Clara's eyes widened, shock flickering in her expression. "She's trying to divide us. We need to warn everyone," I said, adrenaline surging through me at the thought of the growing threat. "If she succeeds, we won't just lose the auction. We could lose everything we've built together. But how do we stop her?" Eric questioned, his gaze frantically darting around, as if expecting shadows to materialize into foes. I searched for answers in the depths of my worries. This wasn't just another misunderstanding. It was war, one I hadn't signed up for. And yet, I felt that life still had strands of hope to weave into this tapestry of despair. "We need to galvanize our supporters," I proposed. "Have a meeting and share the truth with everyone. It's risky, but we have to stand united. If she's gathering to fracture us, we need to remind everyone of our strength." "But what about the others?" Hof straight. "The ones who might side with her?" Clara posed, her voice trembling as the reality began to sink in. A bittersweet wave of camaraderie washed over me, and I took a step closer to them, a smile breaking through my anxiety. "We remind them why they joined us in the first place. Why our club matters, not just a team, but a family." Eric nodded, the spark of hope resuming its flicker in his eyes. "You're right. If we can show them, collectively, that our roots run deeper than any rivalry." Suddenly, the chirping of the birds overhead halted, silenced by the impending storm of our fears. We turned instinctively, drawn by an unseen force. Amongst the distant trees, something caught my eye, a figure crouched low, half hidden by the branches. "Do you see that?" I pointed. Clara squinted, dread creeping into her expression. "What if it's someone sent by Samantha?" Eric took a step back, anxiety creeping into his stance. "We can't risk being seen." But before we could retreat, the figure stood, revealing familiar features. Samantha herself, arms crossed, a smirk painted across her lips like a cat poised to strike. "How quaint," she called, her voice dripping with feigned sweetness as she drew nearer. "Planning your little rebellion, are we? I must warn you, your efforts will be futile." That I felt the blood drain from my face. The lightness of hope drained away in an instant. "What do you want, Samantha?" I managed to demand, trying to steady my shaking voice. Just wanted to let you know that the auction is only the beginning. See, I've been thinking about how to amplify my advantage. And the people you think you can rely on?" She leaned in closer, her eyes glimmering with malice. "I've already persuaded quite a few to come my way. They see your weakness and have decided they'd rather be on the winning side." My heart lurched, and I could feel the cold grip of despair tightening around us. But amidst the tumult of uncertainty, sparks of resilience ignited within me. "You might sway some of them, but you can't take away our spirit, Samantha. We're stronger than you think. Strength through numbers is a tired old story," she retorted, her laughter echoing through the trees, mocking us. "How poetic that you think you can end this with a mere meeting. But who will come to your rescue when they see it's easier to follow me?" The cruel triumph in her eyes sent anger surging through me. I turned to Clara and Eric. Determination coursed like a tidal wave. "We won't give up," I breathed, every ounce of conviction entering my words. "No matter what she tries to manipulate, we're in this together. Well, fight with everything we have." As Samantha turned to leave, her silhouette fading into the shadows, a new resolve settled over us. Yet the path ahead seemed fraught with insurmountable trials. I realized then that it wasn't just the club on the line. Our friendships were too, woven into this fight for identity. But as we exchanged glances filled with renewed purpose, the echo of her last words lingered, unshakable and cold. "Enjoy your fleeting moment of hope. I'll see you at the auction where everything you hold dear will come crashing down." As we stepped away from the park, the looming threat overshadowed by the flicker of hope we had managed to ignite among ourselves, I could feel the cold whisper of treachery tightening around us. Would we crumble, or could we rise, facing the storm together like the family we claimed to be? The answer remained hidden, just out of reach, but desperation urged us forward into the tempest. The next few days unfolded like the turmoil of a storm cloud, and chaotic, yet punctuated by flickers of resilience. I spent hours organizing our meeting, urging our friend group to rally. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on my shoulders as I refined the message we would share, hoping to remind those who had strayed what we stood for. Clara helped tirelessly, her hands flipping through notes while I paced restlessly around my room. The walls painted with the essence of our shared dreams. The autumn sun sank early, casting long shadows on our efforts. Our club meeting was scheduled for that evening, and with every passing hour, the dread looming over my heart grew heavier. A part of me feared Samantha's words would ring true, that those who had distanced themselves would find comfort in her empty promises. The thought gnawed at me, but I buried it deep, unwilling to let despair take root. As I stood at the front of our small gathering in the cramped yet familiar room that had hosted countless celebrations, I caught glimpses of anxious faces. Familiar friends, their eyes reflecting worry but echoing steadfastness, had assembled. Clara squeezed my hand tightly, grounding me with the warmth that our friendship had blossomed upon. "Thank you, everyone, for coming," I began, trying to suppress the tremor in my voice. "We have a lot to discuss tonight, not just about the auction, but what our club truly represents." A silence fell over the room, thick with anticipation. I could feel uncertainty clinging to the air, but I pressed on, drawing strength from Clara's reassuring smile. "Samantha believes that dividing us is the key to her victory. But we started this club as more than just a team. We're a family, and it's time to remind everyone what makes us strong." From the back of the room, a hushed murmur rippled through the crowd. A familiar voice, "Ryan. But what if they think it's too late to turn back?" We can't deny that some of us we've felt cornered. That a trace of bitterness colored the air, and I knew many felt the sting of Samantha's words. For a long time, our strength has been our unity. Please, let's not lose sight of that just because we're facing a challenge. I believe there are still those who value what we've built together, who would rather fight than surrender. We can't give up now. I watched as heads began to nod, doubt gradually giving way to the flickers of hope I had once clung to. Clara's encouraging gaze propelled me onward. I know what Samantha has promised sounds tantalizing, a quicker path to victory, to the attention we've all sought. But what she offers pales in comparison to the bonds we've formed here. We've laughed together, struggled together, and celebrated each other's wins. That's what truly matters. As I spoke, I could sense the air shifting in, electricity igniting in the room. Friendships rekindled, emotions stirred, and before long, soft voices began to echo sentiments of allegiance and camaraderie, pledging support to one another against the mounting threat looming ahead. Just as a wave of unity built momentum, there came a piercing knock at the door, shattering the moment. It swung open, revealing Eric, his face flushed, a mixture of fear and exhilaration etched across his features. "You have to see this. You won't believe it. What is it?" Clara asked, her worry palpable. "Come on." Eric gestured wildly, urgency threading through his excitement. We followed him outside, anxiety creeping back into my chest as I caught the glint of something metallic under the streetlights. It was a car, black and sleek, lurking at the edge of the school parking lot, headlights cutting through the dark. As we drew closer, my stomach dropped when I recognized the figure emerging from the shadows, another layer of dread suffocating the air. It can't be, I whispered, the name almost refusing to come forth. Yet, as the figure stepped into the light, the echoes of disbelief racked through the gathered crowd. It was Jonah, someone I hadn't seen in weeks, and with him stood a small group of our former allies now arrayed like strangers, dressed in the very colors of Samantha's team. Jonah? Clara uttered, her voice cracking slightly, caught between confusion and betrayal. You're with them? A cold grin spread across his face, a smirk enticing the darkness I had come to dread. You should have known better than to underestimate Samantha, you know? It's kind of pathetic, really trying to fight a battle you've already lost. The weight of betrayal fell like a shroud around me, heavy and suffocating. Each head turned toward him, shocked, waiting for a whisper of explanation. What happened? I demanded, the tremor in my voice betraying the sense of heartbreak churning inside. Oh, please, he scoffed, brushing aside the question. Samantha is right. You're weak. I chose to follow someone who has a real vision, not cling to fading memories of what used to be. As he stepped back, the group behind him nodded in agreement, their eyes glinting with a betraying eagerness. Samantha's rebellion was rising, folding those once loyal into her growing arms. And just like that, the hope we had started to kindle sank back into uncertainty. Fearing I would lose Clara again, I reached for her hand, but the rift that had suddenly birthed felt insurmountable. Every watchful gaze from my friends pierced me like daggers, unspoken questions filling the silence, bouncing back and forth as I stood before Jonah, the embodiment of fractured trust. And then he leaned in closer to me, his voice a low murmur meant only for my ears. I heard everything you said. You really think they'll stand with you against us? You're mistaken. Something shifted within me, a dark torrent of emotions swirling just beneath the surface. Betrayal, confusion, anger, and hopelessness danced dangerously close to the edge. Jonah's words, laden with doubt for my resolve, ignited a new fire deep within. But before I could muster a response, the unmistakable sound of chatter returned, swelling like an approaching tide. More figures emerged from the shadows, lingering at the edges of the parking lot, cloaked in anonymity drawn out by the magnetic force of tension that undeniably was building. The evening had just taken a turn, and I stood there paralyzed, every heartbeat echoing the fear of what might next transfigure our fight. Would we confront the realization that the very fabric of our team was unraveling before my eyes? Or would I find the courage to fight against the waves of betrayal and assemble those who still believed our journey was only just beginning? The answer hovered silently in the balance, poised for a heart-wrenching revelation. The following morning, the sun rose hesitantly, as if it too was unsure of its place in the world after the betrayal. The previous night had sent shockwaves through our community. The news of Jonah's shift left a palpable tension hanging in the air, becoming a heavy fog that obscured any flickers of hope. As I sat quietly at breakfast, the weight and uncertainty gnawed at me, twisting my thoughts into an unrecognizable tangle. The clinking of cutlery felt muted against the backdrop of my internal chaos. My mother sat across from me, a newspaper crumpled in her hands as she glanced at me fleetingly, concern etched into the corners of her eyes. "Are you all right, honey?" she asked hesitantly, and the sincerity of her query stung. I forced a smile, hoping to mask the turmoil I felt deep down. "Yeah, just tired," I replied, my voice breaking under the weight of my emotions, but she smiled back, clearly not convinced. She always had a way of seeing through the cracks. I knew I had to do something today, but standing still felt like an unbearable defeat. After breakfast, our group gathered under the swaying branches of the old oak tree in the park, the same spot where we had once shared laughter and dreams of victory. Clara arrived with a determined look plastered on her face, but beneath that veil, I could sense the echoes of fear. Eric followed close behind, his usually upbeat demeanor dulled. As we began to gather our thoughts, Clara stepped forward, her voice steadying. "Listen, I know things have changed, and we're all dealing with doubts, especially after what happened with Jonah. But we can still stand together. If anything, this moment proves just how much we matter. Continuing to fight for our club isn't just about nostalgia, it's about a legacy." Her words wrapped around us, breathing life into the heaviness that loomed in our hearts. "But how?" Eric interjected, frustration straining his tone. "If people are already being swayed, how do we combat that?" I took a deep breath, grappling with a flicker of inspiration sparking in the recesses of my heart. What if we make our message personal? I suggested quietly but firmly. Show people what being a wildcat really means. Let's share our stories, the memorable mornings spent in the stands, the glory of victories that felt like home, the friendships that developed over endless chance. We need to remind everyone why we came together in the first place. A hesitant murmur spread among the listeners, glimmers of unity illuminating their faces. They were beginning to see the possibility that hadn't yet been extinguished. That's the spirit, Clara chimed, her eyes brightening as she picked up on my enthusiasm. If we can gather people to share who they are and what the Wildcats mean to them, maybe we can inspire others. Strength doesn't always need to roar. Sometimes it whispers beautifully through our connections. As Clara spoke, I cast my gaze around us, searching for understanding in the faces of my friends. Hope began to resonate in the shared silencia, pulse of unity rising from the ashes of uncertainty. Let's do it. Let's organize a day in the park. Invite everyone who is still connected to the Wildcats, whether they're players, fans, or just community members. We can share our stories and remind them why we're worth standing for. Each word felt like a healing caress, and as they resonated with the group, a plan began to form, a festival showcasing our connections and passions. As excitement filled the air, I looked at Clara and Eric, a sense of pride swelling in my heart. This will be our stand against doubt. Together, we'll remind everyone what the Wildcats truly mean. As we began to outline how our gathering would unfold, a sense of urgency pulsed through every moment. Ideas flew back and forth with a burst of passion, and for the first time since Jonah had betrayed us, I felt the tides of hope rising again. But I also felt the undercurrent of fear below the surface. Would we be enough? Would our collective stories bring others back into the fold? The day of the gathering arrived, and, as I stood beneath the oak tree, the air buzzed with anticipation. I could see the familiar faces approaching, a mixture of loyal fans and fair-weather supporters, their eyes reflecting uncertainty but driven by the pull of nostalgia. The tables were adorned with old jerseys, photos, and memorabilia representing all the moments we'd shared over the years. I felt my heart race as I watched them arrive, an amalgamation of feelings swirling within me. Our festival began a cacophony of laughter, stories, and connection. I spent my moments moving between groups, listening to anecdotes that breathed life back into our community stories. The essence of what had once been intertwined us, echoing memories of a time when we felt invincible. As I stood listening to Clara read out the triumphant manifesto we had prepared, I could sense the audience coming alive, embracing the word. But as the laughter crescendoed into jubilant shouts, the weight of betrayal sneaked back in like a shadow in the corners of the park. That's when I spotted her, Samantha, standing just beyond the crowd's reach with Jonah beside her, the two of them surveying our efforts. I felt my stomach sink, and an icy wave of conviction surged through my veins. The fear of losing everything we had just begun to rebuild rushed back, but I refused to let it pull me under. She's here, Clara hissed, catching sight of Samantha as well. Just stay focused, I urged, my voice stern. What we have is stronger than her influence. We need to keep celebrating our stories. Yet, even as I spoke, doubt clung to the air like a thick fog, and I found myself glancing towards the pair more often than I wanted. Jonah's expression was smug. The betrayal had marred my heart in ways difficult to articulate. Each chuckle shared among our group reminded me of the friends I had lost, a stabbing pain that only deepened with each laugh I let slip from my lips. Before I realized it, Samantha strutted toward the gathering, fearless and confident, a queen swooping in amid her subjects. Instinctively, I moved to the forefront, adopting the mantle of protector for everyone who stood beside me. Hola. Thanks for joining our little celebration, Samantha, I said, my voice carrying the heaviness of defiance. Her lips twitched with delight. Oh, how charming. What a lovely little gathering you have here. But do you really think this will change anything? The truth matters, and I can assure you, your little utopia will crumble. Her voice dripped with disdain, yet I felt a flicker of fire ignite in my chest. It's not just about the past, Samantha. We're standing together to create a future that holds our stories close. Our values matter more than your manipulation. You're welcome to join and see what real community looks like. For a moment, Surprise flickered across her face. Clearly, she hadn't expected pushback. But in a heartbeat, she shrugged it off, her laughter echoing chillingly against the warmth of our gathering. Believe what you will, but just remember this community is bound to disappear like dust in the wind unless you're willing to follow me. At that moment, Jonas stepped closer to her, shoulder to shoulder, his smirk only growing stronger. Just accept it. You're on an odyssey of disappointment. You're fighting a losing battle. The contempt brimming from them ignited a fire within each member of our group who stood watching. As I scanned their faces, I could see determination sparkling in their eyes, matched by the passionate fury surging through my veins. Our stories mattered, our passion mattered, and it would prevail. Challenge accepted, I declared, sincerity dripping from my tone. We refuse to surrender our identities. We will fight for what we've built here, and I assure you, your empty promises won't sway anyone who knows their worth. As I spoke those words, an artful whisper rippled through the crowd, gathering momentum. Together, we shared stories' small victories, the heartbeat of our community weaving unraveling threads back into a tangible tapestry of hope and resilience. And with each story shared under the canopy of an old oak tree, glimmers of light shimmered against the shadows. The resistance grew stronger. Clara's voice rang loud throughout the park, lifting spirits and reminding everyone of the bonds we had forged together. Our voices joined, a unison that danced in the air, rising beyond the reach of those who would seek to tear us apart, binding our strength together like an unbreakable cord. I felt bolstered by the shared energy, and the hope surged back into my heart. Today was not simply about reclaiming a name. It was about embracing a future turned golden by our shared voices. But then the earth trembled beneath us. Samantha's last gambit surfaced, the sharp cutting edge we had all feared. Her followers joined around us, their faces stern as they mimicked her words that cut deeply against the lifeblood of our community. There's no place for you here anymore, and soon you will realize your delusions will lead nowhere, Samantha declared, sharp as a knife slicing through the fortitude we had built. But even as taut words scuttled toward us, I could feel the grip of fear dissipating within our united front. This time, I reached for Clara's hand, squeezing tightly. The fear would not shackle us down. We were renewed by our stories and our memories. With one final push, the collective heart of our community surged forward, stretching against the confines of what Samantha sought to tear us from. "We are the Wildcats," rose from every corner of the gathering. "We will reclaim our identity." I echoed, "Together," Clara shouted, her voice like an electric bolt through the crowd, igniting a fire once more in each of us, reminding us of what's possible in the presence of hope, community, and resilience. Samantha's smirk faltered, confusion flickering in her gaze. "This cannot be. You're nothing without direction." But we had receded those shadows, clinging to what we believed was attainable. I felt grounded, anchored by the love we harbored for each author, a circle of stories wrapped tightly around us. Today, we wouldn't succumb to doubts. We would move forward, rallying for both our club and our everlasting bond. We stood fierce together, ready to embrace the challenges that lay ahead as a unified force, singing our battle cries through the chaos. And with that, one last wave surged through the crowd, echoing through the very core of my heart. I caught the eye of the girl with the bright smile, her faith reflected in her shining gaze. Together, we would build a legacy worthy of the Wildcats, name one that would withstand the storms, lifting us above even the darkest of treacheries. And as the cacophony of voices reached a fever pitch, I wove the truth into existence. Who would never forget the stories that brought us here. Together, we would carry them through every heartbeat and every moment on the field, igniting the realm of possibilities yet to unfold. We were the Wildcats reborn, reforged, ready to face whatever came next with love and boundless courage. United we stood,